2 years ago, I started working on a VR game where you built relationships through having meaningful conversations. And no writing tool could do what I needed, so I made my own. I would like to show you what my writing tool, Electra, can do. All right, so if you go to badplangames.com, you can go ahead and download Electra, and it'll pop up a download for the patcher. And the patcher does a lot of things. It keeps it updated as I make changes, and will give you access to all sorts of other features as well. But it's pretty small download, so you can just grab that. And if you go into the launcher folder and launch that, it's downloaded from my site, so you have to do the run anyways. But I'm running it on my computer. It's totally fine. And so it'll start to download the writing tool. So basically what you see here is this launcher. It's kind of in the same vein as the Epic launcher. It's got a game and then the creation tools. So the game actually has a lot of different modes. And I'm really excited by it because it offers a completely new opportunity for writers to do something that's never been done before, as far as something that they can monetize. So if you open it up, you can see that there's story mode, canon plus, beyond, and speed dating. Story mode is kind of what it seems like. It can also be referred to as canon, which is basically the game that I make with the Electra, the writing tool, and it's just, what the story is by itself. Canon plus is actually where anyone can add to the game, whereas like taking an existing character and adding more conversations to it, maybe something that you wanted to talk to a character in game about, but were unable to, or a completely new character or edits, but basically in the same game world as the game Forbidden Technique. And then there's Beyond, which is way more open-ended. It's basically with taking the tools that are used for Forbidden Technique and then just using Electra to make whatever you want. And then there's speed dating, which doesn't really need as much context. It's basically just a character, and you can go and talk to them for whatever kind of conversation files you make. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Electra. Now that's downloading, and open that as well. Do that and move it over here. Trying to decide whether I should turn off my screen so that you can see better. There. Okay, so if you go ahead and open Electra, you'll see that on the main menu, it has like a recent files. I haven't made anything because I just downloaded this, so we're going to go ahead and hit new slot, and we're going to call it meaningful conversation. And you can see it pops up a whole lot of things. So let me talk a little bit about what's going on. So meaningful conversation is our slot file, and the slot file organizes a bunch of things. And organizes every single character, a list of all the characters so that they can be somewhat aware of each other, and then a world line that kind of helps organize everything that happens across time and with other events if you choose to add that in. So I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into making a new individual. We're going to name this character Sarah. And she's going to be a girl. We could make her a guy, but we're still going to stick with a girl for now. And then, so what this is the personality window where you can set 7 traits for the character that you're making. So we can get into the math a little bit later. This button here kind of toggles the variable names so you can see where they line up at the bottom for the people that really love to get into that. But you don't have to really worry about it. Basically, what she likes, we're going to say that she likes unique things and she likes friendly things. Some things that she doesn't like, maybe she doesn't like mean, and she doesn't like dumb things. Spark is a little bit more complicated. It could be interpreted as respect or attraction. So we're going to say that she is attracted to the mentor type, and is also attracted to the genius type. And you can see there's a bunch of icons going on. Don't worry about it for now too much, but because it'll kind of explain as it comes into play later. And then also conflict. Now this comes into play when the character is caught between two different decisions. So we're going to say that she's confrontational when in doubt. And all of these, you can pop up the different question marks to kind of explain to yourself what's going on. Now the appearance is under work. We're actually completely redoing the model. We're going to make it a lot better. So for now, this just exists as a placeholder. And so if we go back, we can see Sarah is there. We can go ahead and save it already. And if we hover over here, we can jump into the core of Electra, which is the actual writing part of it. So this is the really exciting stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And so immediately we're in a completely different interface, and there's a lot to explain. So first off, we've got the premise, which is this thing here. So the premise represents, kind of where we're starting from, all the different variables that go into it. So if we click on this, and we'll start to be dragging out a line. Now this represents, a topic that's being selected. So we can just right click and it'll create a new chunk of conversation. So there's a lot going on, but basically a chunk of conversation is a pairing of a player option, a reply, and a character option. So you can see the Sarah pops up while I'm hovering over that. Player hop pops up while I'm hovering over here. And one of the best things about Electra is that you can just immediately start working. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop my face up real quick again. What I'm going to go ahead and do is make sure that looks okay. Yeah. Is go ahead and start typing. So, hey, how's it going? And this is just sample text of something really simple to get it started. But so you can say that, and when you hit enter, just like a normal text message conversation, it immediately jumps to sending it out. So in this structure, I'm typing for both people. So now I'm typing for her. Hey, yeah, pretty good. And the really cool thing that happens here is you can actually just keep hitting enter. And I'm going to actually hide the little preview window. So you can see premise goes straight into this chunk, which is a pairing of this and this, a player and a character. And then it'll just keep going. So what I can actually do is just say, yeah, I'm doing well. Also, did you ever finish that homework from class? And I can just keep hitting enter. Yeah, it was terrible. And on and on. And so one of the best things about Electra is already you don't have to get caught up in making a bunch of branches right away. You can just go straight into typing out conversation. And it's actually my suggested way of making the most interesting conversations is just start with one line and just kind of build it forward. So let's take it back a step. So if we go back to the very first chunk, what's going on here? Let me actually move myself somewhere that's a little bit easier. Actually, I can just pop myself right over the AI. Perfect. Actually, a little bit higher up. Awesome. Oops. So what I can actually do here, if I'm selected on this, is I can begin to look at all of the settings going on. So for the player, their kind of interface with what the game understands is the tone. So right here, you see a bunch of sliders. There's 6 sliders that go positive or negative. So, hey, how's it going? You might say that's friendly. And you might also say, it's a little bit cliche. So well-mannered. And there's a dictionary that kind of matches the top 2, the highest emotions in both orders across any of these parameters. So it's a really fun adjective or kind of phrase, tone, expression type definition that I think is really, really fun to play around with just as a writer. So we're going to say this tone is well-mannered, and that her response on a scale of 0 to 10, as far as positive reaction or negative to positive, disastrous to amazing, we're going to say that it's, it's decent. It's decent. It's not bad, but, nothing too special. And so on and so forth. But what's really interesting here is, and let me pop up the calculator tab, which gives you a really good idea of what's going on here. What's interesting is all of the personality traits that we set in the last window. All the personality traits we set in the last window come into play here. So by default, your bond, which can also be thought of as your friendship with the person, is at 5. So if you think about the rating of how she's going to react, how the character is going to react using the Electra system, it's going to be on a 0 to 10 scale. So right now the reply is rated at a 5.9. So let's say that it was, we thought it was extremely friendly, to say, hey, how's it going? And extremely cliche. Cliche doesn't come into play here, but friendly does. So friendly actually makes the rating a 6, which is almost exactly where that is. Now, on the other hand, another thing we could do is if we added a different tone, and the structure here is it should mean the same thing, but the expression is different. So we're still asking her, how's it going? So, hey, how's it going? We could say something like, I'm not really interested in the reason your face looks like. This is a tricky one. Hey, sup? And so what you could do here is move the sliders in different directions. So is mix up the expression. So maybe that was mean or dumb. And yeah, I mean, it could be interpreted that way. So let's say that that's the other expression. You can see that this slider's moving around, and the calculator tab has a lot of really cool things going on. So in this case, there's only one reply, so it doesn't make much of a difference. Now, this rating does have an impact on the relationship, which is the bond over time. But let's take a look at her reply. So right now she says, hey, yeah, pretty good. And she takes it like a champ. What if she had a terrible reaction? It's just like, I didn't ask for you to be so goddamn nosy. Pretty terrible response. You wouldn't really expect that. And you can see that the rating is a 4.2, but maybe if your response was, more mean and, more dumb, then you can see how it snaps at a certain point. So you really, as a writer, get a chance to kind of play with, how much you're impacting the scale. And so that's the calculator tab, and you can see that, throughout. And so that's like, I think it's just really fun. You get to see the emotions, and that's something the player will be interfacing with a lot, and all the different personality parameters going on. So let's take a look at another thing you can do, which is mess with the starting premise parameters in the first place. So basically, I'm just going to look at relationship here real quick. What relationship does is it actually tracks a bunch of variables that's kind of ongoing with your relationship. So maybe if you're just first talking with a person, your bond would start at a 5, and we can see in the calculator that has a huge part of how she's reacting. But maybe you say stuff like this and it decreases the relationship all the way down to a 3. And so now, even if you choose a well-mannered response, and maybe it wasn't quite as positive as we talking about it being not really that friendly, as far as like a whole 10. Maybe you choose that, and if your relationship is that low, then she's actually really still not going to like you. So there's a lot of really interesting kind of live tests you can do, and another huge part of why the fact that Electra has an output log where you can play through a bunch of steps at a time goes a really, really long way. And so once again, we can pick a tone here. And play around with these sliders to see if we can find a word that matches that really well. And again, we can play around with where we feel like this matches. Maybe she's complaining, but she does it in kind of a positive way where she's still happy that you asked her, or maybe it does turn to be a lot more negative, and you can expand in that direction. So there's so much you can do with this, and I think the grouping actually allows you to do a lot of really fascinating things. And it should also be noted that while the tones are shared across, so like I said, when you add more tones, you are keeping the same meaning. So if you say something, if you add a different tone and you type in the option, it should mean the same thing. You're asking how the person's doing, and let's see, and looking for words that kind of feels like matching. So you can get across something that the game understands through the sliders, but can connect with the player in a really fun way. So when you do that, depending on a response, actually determines what comes next. So let me just drag this off so I can reset it. So you say, oh, what's the latest with you? And if she responds positively, hey, yeah, pretty good, then you can see there's the connection drawn out that I drew out before to continuing to talk about, oh, yeah, how's that homework going and all that. Now, if she reacts negatively, it's actually something completely different. So if I, once again, reset this really quick. So if I go to the negative response, like I didn't ask you for be so nosy, we can give the player a completely different set of options. So this is kind of one of the ways that branching can work in Electra, and it's very much oriented around the way that the character responds. Now, you might be asking, oh, well, when does the player choose? Well, the player chooses between different meanings out of all the different options that a branch gives you. So, so one option, if she reacted, if Sarah reacts that negatively, you might say, sorry to bother you. See you next time. And you might completely bow out of the conversation. So you're just maybe being a little bit polite there. So if there's another continue, however, to say, I really don't care for this hostility going on. A really good combination of annoyance and irritation, kind of passive aggressive. Perfect. And so say that she really doesn't like that. so you might say something like that as another option. So this is kind of how the branching works. You get a certain number of options depending on the reply. So ignore this little arrow thing right here. But basically, if you here, let me reset it real quick. If you say something and she has a terrible reaction to it, probably because she already hates you. So normally normally she's snapping to a much more positive reaction. But if you say something that she hates, even if she has a relatively even relationship with you, and it snaps down to the negative response, where she's really not happy with you talking to her at all, you then have these options. So you can say, "Oh, sorry to bother you," and you can wrap that right off right there. And so maybe if you choose to be a little bit more confrontational here, like, "Hey, I don't deserve this," um, you can actually do something even more interesting. So you can have the fight back and forth here, but you can actually go on a whole extended monologue. So what we can do is, you see these types right here. We can actually do player only. And what that allows us to do is to chain multiple pieces of dialogue together. So, I really don't care for a hostility that's going on here. I was just trying to be nice, and I don't get why you have to treat me like this. And these options can have multiple tones, so different ways to express "I don't care" the hostility. This is a passive aggressive one, like, "Whoa, whoa." Once again, the trick here is you're trying to express the same idea, so the only difference is in the expression of it. So passive aggressive way to say it, I really don't care for I really don't care for this hostility going on, or, "Whoa, whoa, why are you mad at me?" is, it's a little bit more direct. Oh, well, you can see I'm the one that chose the verb, so I definitely do not have all the combinations memorized, but yeah, exactly. So, "Why are you so mad at me?" And that chains, into the next thing. We're like, "I was just trying to be nice." So once again, we're serious, and maybe, trying to be friendly about it. You're not understanding what's going on, and maybe a different way to say that too. And you can add a lot of options, and there's a lot of depth going on here. But let's keep it to that for now. And we're actually going to make this a player only also. And there's a really cool thing that we're allowed to do here. So now we give her in the conversation the chance to respond. And what we can do is we can change this into a reply only. So reply only is, so now we're just, responding as Sarah. So we could say something like, "Oh, you, however I want." It's really not my problem. She's feeling sassy today. And so a very cool thing here happens where, because normally she's reacting to the tone, right? But how do we decide what to react from? So what we can do is change it from direct filter to inherit. So what that does is, pops up a little thing that we can inherit from. So let's select back on. I basically had to respond to the last thing I said, so out of order. So if I hit a check right there, I can drag a little line from there to there, and that just lets the character know that she's reacting to this. So depending on how you say that, she will choose her reply here. Although there is not a calculator preview. I do need to set that. That would be awesome. I'm going to make a note of that, but that's coming soon. And so she's like, "Oh, I'll treat you however I want to treat you." And I was just trying to be nice. So then, she might, go on to say another thing in reaction to the first thing you said, "Because you keep bothering me. Your stupid questions." Once again, pretty aggressive, but, maybe there was a lot going on at that time. And once again, we're going to do inherit, and we're going to jump back up to this one and expand, and then drive it down. So the really, really cool thing happening here is, and I guess you can't see expanded because my face is covering it up, but what's really cool having here is, you're saying two things in a row, and she's uniquely responding to the way that you choose to say it, each different thing. So there's an incredible amount of potential here to give the player not just different things to say, but it inspires a very unique interaction, because you're kind of piling up a whole monologue that kind of a whole war of speech that the other person then responds to in the corresponding segments. If you've ever been in an argument where somebody's like, and you did this thing, and I really don't appreciate how you did this thing, and I can't believe you're always doing this, and you can respond to each of those points in a tailored way, which is somewhat very natural, I think, to how people communicate, which is usually saying all sorts of things all at the same time. So really excited about what you can do with that. And let's see, what else? So the other aspect is, and you might have been looking at it already, so at this point we're actually inheriting the tone that is coming from the player, but there's actually multiple metrics to draw from. So to keep things simpler, I'm just going to jump back up to this. So right here, you can see we're using the tone, which is the bond plus the two things that she likes minus the two things she doesn't like. But we can change the filter that she uses to make these decisions. So charm is spark, so her attraction for the player, which right now is at 0. So you can see that updating, and you can see how wildly that changes her reaction. So maybe she's really only cares about when someone asks about her day, depending on how attracted she is to the person. So if she's very attracted, then she's going to choose this result. In fact, we could add something for that, which is an amazing, like, I was hoping you would ask, or, or you're my favorite person to talk to. Something like that. And in this case, you probably want to give that a whole another set of extensions. But you can see this is a very natural way for the writer to work back and forth with almost kind of what the character is asking for, through these equations, through the different variables that you can play with. And there's quite a lot of variables that you can play with for a lot of different reasons. In fact, another way that the conversation can start is if the character initiates it through some sort of action that happens, through eye contact or through some sort of other in-world action. So there's so much you can do with conversations in the system. And when you structure the conversations as structured around the person you're talking to or the character you're talking to as a player, it's actually relatively easy to organize. And, as I was saying before, what you can do with, just hitting enter, you can really just focus on writing a compelling conversation and then branch from there. There's really just such an encouraged free flow of how you can work with. It really does feel like working with your character when you're building conversations like this. And so when you're done, you can just hit here and hit save, and we'll be there the next time you come back in.